This is the Giraffes Don't Eat Steak podcast, a show that brings you marketing stories, tips, hints, and much more. A treat for those who want to succeed in business or marketers who just want to
Hello,
learn.
and welcome to another episode of Giraffes Don't Eat Steak. And today I am joined by Dawid from NerdCow, and he's probably going to kill me for just saying that they are a web development team because I've worked them before, and I feel like they're a lot more than that. So welcome, David.
Hi, Alex. Hi. Yeah, I mean that's the quickest introduction you can give, and everyone will understand that. But yeah, we work with B2B SaaS mostly and tech, and the way we are positioning it now, we are untangling the chaos, because when you come to any agency with a website, you don't know anything basically. You have a
Yeah,
problem and you have 1,000 ideas, and it's a mess. So that's what we do, but in shortest way possible. Yeah, web design agency.
that's
That's
great. I mean, I'm
and pronunciation on my name as well. So
sorry.
yeah,
I did well, did I?
yeah.
So David, not David, right?
Both are fine, but yeah,
Okay.
David is what it is. Yeah.
Perfect. So, I mean, I've worked with many web agencies before, and I've had various experiences and various different, and I've witnessed various different styles of working and processes. When I worked with you guys before with another B2B SaaS company, I was very impressed by the process that we went through. It was really, really, really exciting. Actually, I remember even specifically where I was the first
Oh,
session we had. Yeah, I remember, and we were. I think it was the first time as well that I'd ever used Miro. And by the way, now I'm just an absolute addict on Miro. So thank you for introducing me to that.
no,
Um, but maybe let's just start by going through sort of your philosophy to
mhm.
creating a website. Let's say you've got a new client. What is your go-to setup to start creating a website? Where do you start and where do you end? I think that'd be quite an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, and I can definitely sympathize with what you said about different ways of how agencies work, because even we have worked in like probably 4 or 5 different ways across the years. So you have those traditional like waterfall agencies where someone gives you a brief, then you disappear for 6 months, and then you come back with a website, and the person tells you that it's shit, and then you do it again, and it takes a year or two. So yeah, we've been through that. We've been through the process that you mentioned. We have now consistently changed it as well. So it's not overly different from what you are used to, but we have changed it now as well. And the starting point is what I mentioned in the intro, is actually that when someone comes to any agency, it can be web agency, marketing, whatever it is, they don't know almost anything. That they have problems, they have ideas, they don't know if those ideas are good. They may have some data that they have never used, so you can't even tell if it's good data or bad data. Basically, it's a mess. And that's the starting point. And at that point, the most important thing for me personally is, and I think not everyone appreciates that, and it will probably take a lot of time, if ever, for people to appreciate that. But I think the number one thing is the alignment. That's where we start, because you have teams coming into with different agendas. So you have sales team, marketing, all of that, and usually you only work with maybe one contact point from marketing. And for us, it's very important to speak to as many people across the business as possible. And actually, yesterday I was thinking about it from perspective of one of our clients that we have been with like 8 years now. I think I've been through like 30, 40, or 50 people across the organization over those years. So I've spoken to them, not just that I know they exist. We've been in a meeting, a workshop. We exchanged messages on Slack about something they needed, and like every month it seems like there's someone new, and it's not the person that's just been hired. They've been there for years, and we meet them. They have a requirement, and I think that's the start. That has to be the start, and it rarely is. You usually get briefs, or maybe you even submit an RFP
Mhm.
to a client. You are pitching yourself to them, and it's just devoid of that conversation, really. I think that's the starting point.
I mean,
But
I'd like to comment on that because I
yeah,
remember when we were working together, you were adamant that we bring in as many stakeholders as possible from different departments all the way up to the CEO. And I think we were quite resistant with that in the beginning, because we weren't really sure if that was the right call. Turns out it was the right call, because you find often when if you're in marketing and you're working with a web agency and you're creating a website and you're like, this is really beautiful, I love it, and you've gone through all the processes that you think are correct, like going through your audience, etc., etc. It almost doesn't matter to a point if the CEO, and especially if it's a CEO who's a business owner and CEO, sees the final product that you've done and is suddenly like, I don't like it. I don't like this, and this, and this, and that. And then having to go back and retrospectively make some changes in the build, not only is inefficient, but it's also costly, takes a lot of time, and also it means that you haven't taken that stakeholder along the journey to understand the process of how you've got to that point. And something that we see a lot in business is that everyone has an opinion, and it's very hard to not have an opinion on something, especially if it's your baby. And opinions are great, but opinions also are dangerous things as well, because opinions are completely littered with bias, and it's very hard to be able to put a objective opinion onto something if you haven't been through a process. If you just look at something and you're like, I don't like the color red, for example, let's just making it simple, but maybe we're using red for a very, very good reason. Maybe we've done a lot of customer research, we've looked at the psychology of red, we've done competitive analysis, and it makes us stand out more in the market, etc., etc. And so if you're spending a lot of time creating a design with a lot of thought behind it and process, and you get to the end of building after whatever 2-3 months, and then you then share it to the board, and they just say, I don't like it, and then you've got to go back and try and explain everything. It's a nightmare at that point.
Yeah, I agree, and that actually stems from the issue that they are not involved initially. And
Exactly.
I understand that it's a tough thing to do. We've done this as well with workshops with a pretty traditional company. They actually are quite reliant on councils in the UK, so it's a lot of politics involved. So you can imagine that getting workshops through that kind of old-fashioned company is not an easy sell, but then once they are actually in them, they loved it, and we were able to understand their point of view, explain how it may be not the perfect one. Just everyone has an opinion, as you said, and that opinion is based on something. If you just hear it after the project is done, when you have invested a lot of money, the focus is not on understanding where they're coming from. The focus then is to adjust it as quickly as possible to make them happy, because you've invested so much, and just now understanding them just prolongs it even more. So that's a big issue, and getting to a point where you can work with someone who may be opinionated, or it's fine, people are different. Getting to a point where you can actually launch something without showing them is impossible if you are not talking to those people. And we've had that for years, and even with existing clients. And after some years, you actually get into that rhythm of being able to launch things without showing it to anyone. But that's based on the fact that you communicate with them all the time. You talk to different people across the business, so you have to build that trust up. And in terms of B2B especially, that literally takes years. Even if they are paying you for expertise, etc., you would assume that they trust you, and they do to an extent, obviously, because they trusted you with the project. But just getting to a point where you can actually put something out there, whether it's a website or an ad, that takes a long time. And if you are not involving those people in the creation process, then you will never get to that point.
Yeah, completely agree. So what are if you just in simple terms, what are the main stages of your process? So starting from, I don't know, audio
Mhm.
way to
Yeah,
design.
so the very first thing is an alignment workshop, and it's not always needed because it just depends on the scope. If the problem is big or like medium to big, then you obviously need that alignment. An alignment workshop just gets us from the point of we know nothing to we have a very clearly defined problem, and we agree that this is a problem, because where you involve CEO, sales, marketing, all of them will have a different idea of what the problem is, but you can never solve 5 or 10 problems at once. It just doesn't work. Focus is very important. So I think the first step is alignment and focusing on what's actually the problem, was what gives you the most business value. That's the start, and from there we actually send surveys to people, so just to understand a bit better, because even a day of workshops, which is a few hours, you can't ever understand it fully. And one-on-one conversation versus being in the room with everyone is a different dynamic as well. You would know that very well. Not everyone will speak up in the presence of CEO, for example. That's valid. I mean, you need some way around this. And from there, we work towards a prototype with the team, because we need to know what their ideas are. And it's not that we will take their ideas on board and implement them as is, because that's not the point. We just need to understand first, when we get the idea, we can then work backwards towards where do they actually come from with this idea. So that gives us a bigger platform to build on. And once we have that, we can merge those ideas into a prototype, which initially is based just on our experience, but we then user test it with someone resembling the target audience, which is not always easy, but we haven't failed to this day to find someone for any project. So it's possible.
Great.
And that will be the milestone. And technically, we experimented with that in the past, but actually nobody wants that. Technically, at that point, you could just say, yeah, that's great, and take it elsewhere to implement. But that never happened. People are always keen to proceed with the implementation, and the implementation is also based on the basis of communication. We are agile first. We're not tied to any framework like Scrum or anything, because those are quite specific and just limiting. Agile is the mindset in the end. So we want to communicate with people, as I mentioned, just as wide of a network of stakeholders as possible. Just keep them up to date. Focus on one thing at a time. So prioritization is the key. Every single week, at the very least, we need to reprioritize what's been going on, because things change. And even if you get feedback about something, that might shift the priorities suddenly, because hey, something happened, or maybe we have a new launch coming up, so we need to deprioritize something. So that would be in short. I think Tomasz recorded a great video recently about it on our website.
Okay, great.
2 days ago, actually. So if you'd like more, then the NerdCow
Listeners
website.
can go to the NerdCow website and check out that video. But it sounds like almost the easy part of your job is the technical side of like building
Mhm.
a website. The hard part is the psychology and the people management, and trying to get a lot of value out of those workshops and understanding what the problem is. I mean, do you have any specific techniques to be able to understand what people really want? Because you said to me, for example, just now that um, they will describe their problem, but then you need to understand where that problem comes from and what, like, why they're thinking about that. Sometimes, for example, like we see a lot of times when people are looking for a marketing agency, they just say, "I need more leads," but so
Mhm.
that's their problem. But in actual fact, a lot of the time that isn't their problem. The problem isn't that they don't need leads. Maybe actually what they need is a better retention rate. They need to work
Mhm.
on keeping their customers, adding value to their existing customers, or improving their sales funnel, and not increasing the leads, just improving the sales funnel. So is there any do you have any sort of techniques, or is it just experience in the field that when you hear a problem, you kind of associate it maybe with something else, or?
It is a bit of experience always. We do have not very structured, but we do have a database of problems that are common and solutions that people come up with, and the understanding of that. But actually taking a step back, with websites, it's a bit easier because website is just a small part of the entire marketing funnel. So the problems are quite narrow. If someone comes to you as a business, I need more customers, then you have like a million of ways of achieving that. With a website, you have one way, getting traffic there and converting it better. That's basically the limitation here. So it's not as hard as in your situation, and it's not always possible to understand those. Well, maybe it is possible to understand, but there's not always a logical explanation to everything that people want. But that's also natural to us. We are very emotional creatures, so sometimes a person will tell you to move a button somewhere and they will die on that hill, even though it's absolutely no business value. And sometimes you have to pick your battles because even if there's zero value in moving that, there's rarely negative value. So it's mostly communication, and those alignment workshops are great. I think it's tough to explain it briefly because there are a few very specific exercises around it. Everyone can speak up about the opportunities they see, the problems they see, the potential problems with someone else's idea. So it's very collaborative, and I think collaboration is the tool in general. It's what's missing, especially from website projects most of the time.
Okay, cool. So as we're now in approaching halfway through 2025, I guess, in a couple of months, which is crazy. Are you seeing any, do you see sort of different trends each year in terms of what people are looking for, or maybe consumer behavior that changes the dynamic of how you're creating websites, or where you put some focus, or just generally, do you see any new trends or anything that's happening right now in the space of web design?
Yeah, I think it's a bit counterintuitive because it's slower than people think, and that even goes back to the wider advertising space. If you think about the best ads out there, you would probably come up with something like the Coca-Cola Christmas ad or something similar.
Yeah.
That ad is like 30 years old. I remember it from childhood, and those ads work the best. People like Mark Ritson talk about it all the time. So I think in a way digital is in a weird space because digital evolves quickly in terms of technology and all of that, but consumer behavior doesn't shift nearly as fast. So people are trying to jump on trends like, I don't know, pop-ups, parallax scrolling, carousels, that and that. There's something new every single year. But it's kind of like producing a new ad every single year where you had one that's been working for 20 years already. Like psychology doesn't evolve at such a rapid pace as just technology. And sometimes people are caught up with that because they see technology changing and they want to use it now. Well, it's not the time to use it just yet.
I always have a good example of that during the 80s in the music industry, when suddenly there was a lot of new electronic and synthesized sounds and instruments, and lots of like echo and reverb and things like that. And so in the 80s, a lot of music producers, and if you listen to a lot of 80s music now, they just piled on all of these effects, and it's like sounds like a wishy-washy thing, like I always refer to that when I'm talking about new technologies or new softwares and such things. So like for websites, and that just made me think when you said people like pop-ups. Sometimes you go to a website and you've got a pop-up here, pop-up there, chat box, all of the widgets, and you get to the website, you're like, oh my God, a
What's
sentence
going on?
load of everything.
Yeah, and that's the problem because when technology evolves, and especially in digital now, the entry level just goes down drastically. So almost anyone can build anything, and you can, as you said, take a widget anywhere, Wix, even WordPress, Squarespace. You can take a widget and put it there. So if you see something shiny, you start putting it there and there and there, and then you have everything is shiny, and then nothing is shiny basically.
Yeah.
When that happens, it just abuses the hierarchy of information. So I think we are obviously evolving with the market, but at the same time, the core is always in the psychology, in user behavior, and that just doesn't change that drastically.
And so what are the key psychological traits of a human when we're navigating a website?
So this will depend largely on your audience. We had audiences of older people on e-commerce websites where they were in like browsing mode, so you could give them hundreds of pop-ups, but they just wanted to browse things because they were activating memories, etc., to buy things. But I think the core principle is also a funny one, and it's around attention spans, which everyone thinks they are going down, but they are not. If the stuff you have is good, if you are directing qualified or semi-qualified traffic to the website and you are actually making sense on it, people will read everything. And obviously you need scannability, so you have headings, you have bolding, you have different sections just to break it all up. But the core principle is that people actually want to read what you've given them, and obviously when they first land on you, you have like a few seconds to catch their attention. That's the key, but everyone knows that by now. But later on, people actually spend a lot of time on websites. I think more than ever. If I didn't look at the stats recently, but I think if I look into our analytics now across different clients, it would be probably more than a year ago. For example, so I think we're again underappreciating how engaged people are on websites. We just think it's quick, CTA here, immediately go to purchase or book a demo. I think more patience is required in websites.
No, I think that's a really interesting fact. I think you're absolutely right when you say that everybody is now believing that our attention spans are shortening. I think maybe what is actually happening is there's more and more content available. So there's more, on platforms like Instagram or TikTok or whatever, there's a lot of competition for space and time and attention. But you're right, if you grab the attention and you have the right content, people are willing to invest their time to consume that content. So if you're on a website, as long as your content is actually valuable, relevant, and interesting to what they're looking for, then you have all the time in the world for them.
Yeah, and TikTok is a good example because TikTok used to be exclusively under a minute, right? You can do, I think, 10 or even more minutes now for a TikTok. And they have TikTok Shop now as well. So people are live streaming shops and people are joining them. They are not watching that stream for 30 seconds. They are there for minutes, some probably even hours. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. So yeah, even in those platforms that kind of make us think, hey, TikToks are quick, so everyone has low attention span. Yes and no, and it just depends on the intent as well, because entertainment, yeah, probably people have low attention span for that. But if you're making a B2B purchase, I mean, that's not a TikTok.
No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, you are correct. I mean, even in like Instagram, etc., we're getting 1 minute and it was like 30 seconds and then a minute, and now it's 3 minutes maximum on real.
And so if the attention spans are decreasing, why would they be increasing those? So there are a few signals about that, but yeah, on websites you have a very different people have the very different mindsets when they go to websites.
So do you guys work much with content, or you mostly focused around on the design and the housing of content?
So we mostly work on housing the content, obviously, and especially me, I think Tomasz as well. We are both generalists, so we are not. Neither of us is like specialist in just one area, and I think that works to our advantage as well. And we have to do content for ourselves because that's how we get clients partially. So we definitely have input on that whenever possible on content copy, but our expertise is exactly that. We focus on as few areas as possible just to do them the best that we can.
Yeah. So if we're talking about we were talking about attention span, and we're saying we all know by now that in the beginning, so in like the hero image, the top, the above the fold section, we do only have 3 to 5 seconds to capture the attention of somebody. What do you have a, well, maybe you have a secret sauce and you don't want to tell people, but do you have any do you have any sort of general guidelines of what you absolutely should not do in your in to grab the attention of someone in the main real estate of your website or LinkedIn or whatever it is, or
Mhm.
something that you should absolutely do?
Yeah, it's the worst answer out there because it depends. That's everyone's favorite. Uh, You could sum it up in by saying just again focusing on focus, which is a weird phrase to say. But if you are focused in your hero, then you automatically play into that short attentions, well, not attentions, but the short amount of time that people will be looking at it. Because when people land on the website, they have just a few key goals, and one of them is, am I in the right place? Is it for me? So you have to answer questions like this. And I think most of it is about messaging, which we obviously don't deliver as part of it. We can, but it's not our main service.
Mhm.
So I think the secret sauce is in messaging, and that's as much it depends as possible because every company is different. They have slightly different missions, visions, products, even the audience. If you take competitors, their audiences are not one to one. They're not exactly the same. In B2B, you cannot exactly steal someone's audience. You can steal parts of it for sure, but it's never one to one. And some people like the vibe of maybe more casual companies in B2B. Some people are more traditional. So I think messaging is the secret sauce, and that will just depend on your company and on your target audience.
So how did you guys get to B2B? Have you always been B2B? Like focus on
Not
B2B?
always, no, but we found, especially in e-commerce, B2C is full of dark arts, if you can call them that. You have pop-ups, you have fake discounts, you have all of those things which we don't enjoy as consumers, and we don't just enjoy working with those spaces.
Mm.
And at the same time, B2C is extremely tight margins for not for us, just for our clients that are in B2C, because those are unless you go into luxury, but in general B2C is very tight margins. So your changes aren't as impactful to people, and it's always about profit. And in B2B, obviously, you are about profit as well. But B2B companies are a bit more mature, I would say, in terms of marketing, and they pay more attention to marketing than, I would say, sales, because a lot of B2C marketing is just pushing a sale. And in B2B, you have buying committees, which you can love or hate. I think they're okay. They have a reason to exist. So you speak to different people. They have different needs. It's a bit more intricate, and I think we just enjoy that challenge of of
Do,
B2B
do
compared
you think
to
do you
C.
think there's different emotions involved in B2C businesses and B2B businesses, or not really?
I don't think so. Emotions maybe not. Maybe the source of those emotions is a bit different, because again, not many B2C companies are known for their mission or vision. But when you think about something like 37 Signals, which are the creators of Basecamp, and they actually started as a web agency, they do have a huge mission. They are very lean operation. They have no funding, just bootstrapped. They have a lot of free resources, just working to elevate the industry as a whole. And in B2C, you're just chasing the dollar most of the time.
Yeah.
So emotions are not very different because we cannot control the emotions, to be honest. Like, I mean, you can control anger to some extent and stuff like that, but when you're actually just browsing, purchasing something, you're not thinking about the emotions. They just happen,
Yeah.
and they're pretty much the same. So in a way, you can borrow a lot from B2C to B2B, and I think B2B actually doesn't do it enough. They kind of paint B2C as like that black sheep, and they're black. We don't want to have anything to do with them, but you can actually borrow some of that stuff because those emotions are quite constant between the two.
Yeah. I mean, I found the difference I found between B2C and B2B is a lot of the time decision maker the decisions that decision makers have in those two different types of businesses, like you said, they come from different places. So, for example, in B2C when we've had a lot of customers calling the company saying, I've seen your ad and I think this about your ad, blah, 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 blah. And it might just be one person saying or two people saying it. And sometimes that can cause a panic in the company. Oh, they don't like this, or oh, they're offended by this. We need to change this. We need to change something on our website, but without any thought, because they've had a complaint and they think, oh my God, everyone in the world must think this. But then you have to say, well, how many people actually said that? You say, two? Okay, two people, and we have a customer base of 50,000 people, and we've only had two. So sometimes there can be um, knee-jerk reactions based on someone in the public giving their opinion about your website. Whereas I think in B2B that happens less because you've got I think people who are looking for products in the B2B space are less emotional when they're buying, whereas consumers are a bit more emotional when they're buying, if they're buying something that's personal to them rather than a tool that helps their business. So maybe some of the decisions come from a different place.
Yeah, so on the level of, let's say, B2B2C, the second level, that is a customer. So your clients targeting customers, definitely there's a difference there. And I can absolutely understand that people are very, I mean, in B2C, when someone complains about you, that can quickly snowball into a bigger issue. And as you said, it doesn't happen as much in B2B. And it's partially because of the maturity that I mentioned, but also the audience is much more narrow in B2B than B2C. So if in B2C 10 people tell you something sucks, it's very likely that thousands of people will think the same. And if in B2B, let's say 1% out of 100 tells you something, it's very likely that fewer than 1% of people will think that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the issue of scale is also at play there for sure.
So that's why I think analytics is very, very important, especially on your website. So is there any, in terms of analytics, do you have any absolute setups that you absolutely have to do, or any sort of key setups to understand the basics of your website? I mean, what's your sort of philosophy around analytics on a website?
So analytics is tricky because even if you go to medium businesses, which are quite large, but by all means, medium, I think, downplays how large those businesses are. So you have micro, small, medium, and medium is quite large, but many medium businesses don't even have enough traffic to get valuable insights from analytics. And we do still use it because it's better than knowing nothing. You can find leading indicators. But I think that if you are looking for the not so secret sauce, that would be in stuff like Hotjar, Microsoft Clarity, for example. So more along session recordings, more around qualitative feedback than quantitative, because again, the scale of B2B is usually much smaller. We've worked with people who have maybe 50 target accounts worldwide, and that's it. So if you are working at such a low scale, the numbers are obviously tiny.
Yeah.
I think the qualitative feedback and qualitative user tests, just speaking to people, even that resemble your audience. Again, if you have 50 companies worldwide that you can target, you have probably like 100 of people globally that can give you feedback. You will never reach them, or it will be stupid expensive.
Yeah.
So those qualitative insights from maybe Clarity, again, session recordings, asking for feedback on the website, those things are probably much more important than analytics.
That's a really good point. So when you're thinking about analytics, you also just have to think about realistically how much traffic is possible for me to receive, and based on that, what type of analytics do I need? And if you do have some basic Google setups on there, and you do have a low volume of traffic, I guess it's the lesson there is maybe don't take that as golden information, because there's just simply not enough information to make it valid.
Yeah, and even if you have that traffic, that's just, again, quantitative insights. So you may spot that your bounce rate is high, but you have no idea why. You still need to go for qualitative insights, which are either from experience or maybe user testing, research. So yeah, it's a small drop in the ocean, and I think people think that analytics will fix their websites. They can help, but definitely won't fix it.
So do you offer user testing services?
Yeah, we facilitate user tests. We've done that for I think 5 years now. Just shortly after COVID, I think that was something that came to our attention, which is almost around the time that we worked together. I think maybe a year off or something like that. So yeah, we do those. We then distill that feedback to present that to stakeholders. Obviously, we do get some internal feedback from that as well, just for us, because not everything that someone says in a test is relevant to a stakeholder, but it can shape up the website as a whole. And the best thing about it is usually you get a ton of extra insights from that, even spanning the entire business. So before I said that the website is just a tiny part of the marketing funnel, but actually the way we work with websites and workshops, people often take insights from those workshops and just apply them to different areas of a business. And one of those examples was actually the company I mentioned before, which is quite political, reliant on councils, so like public institutions. They actually went out from the first workshop we had, and they decided to introduce like the type of agile catch-ups that we do at NerdCow, just internally. So those are the things that you can get on top of that, and I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. I think when we were working together, we did quite a lot of work around the customer. And I think we haven't really touched on that too much in today's conversation, but it's so important to understand the who your customer is, what is it they're looking for, what is their problem, what kind of traits do they have, and how can you develop a website that is A, accessible to them, B, provides a lot of value, understands the issue that they're having, and puts that sort of front stage so that they come to the website, and like you said, they instantly know that this is the right place I want to be, this is the problem I need to solve. So if you, I guess the work we did with you, I could imagine that some businesses who may not have done that previously have gone, oh, okay, that's amazing. I never really thought about my customer in that way. And then I can take that and use it in the rest of my business.
Yeah, that's a very good way to sum it up. Exactly. There's a difference between knowing a pain point and understanding it, because I think every business know the pain points of the customer or a client, but they don't always understand it. So you could take that example of someone that wants more conversions on a website, which is not always the problem that they have. So where are they coming from? And if it's, let's say, a marketing manager who is the first point of contact in that buying committee, let's say your champion, he found you, he has to pitch you upwards. So his intention is rarely to get more conversions on the website. It's often status inside the company, or maybe earning a promotion. So those are the things that you have to consider, and you can only really see that when you are among those people in tests, maybe at conferences. We've been to a few conferences in the industries of our clients as well. We've listened to podcasts or even influencers in their area, if you can call them that in B2B. So it's very important to just understand those people, because their intention, on the surface, it's to make money, but it's not always just that. There's always a few layers.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to, what would be your what's your top piece of advice for anybody who is thinking about getting a new website, or is being pressured from the top saying we need a new website? Like, what is the first thing someone should think about when they've been given that challenge?
Yeah, the first thing will be always to get those people in the same room and actually agree on one main goal, and it shouldn't be superficial, like get more leads, because obviously everyone wants more leads, more customers. That's natural, but hearing those people out, understanding why they think something is wrong with the website. Maybe it might turn out that you don't need a new website. It might turn out that messaging is an issue, which is quite often the case. And technical setup is often tricky because inheriting a website is usually a pain for any agency. Just getting someone else's work, it's hard to deal with that. But if you are especially in Wix or Squarespace, WordPress, something where you can relatively easily edit, copy, I think that's the first step. And understanding why people internally think the website sucks is the absolute first step. And after that, if you don't have a process as structured as ours, because obviously you just want a website, you're a company that has no expertise in web design. So the next step after that would be actually speaking to people that resemble your target audience or maybe in your target audience. In B2C is a bit more expensive. I think typically you are looking at like 50 to 100 pounds per person. And then obviously your internal resources to interview them on a video call, for example. But if you can do that, even with the existing website, you will learn a ton that you haven't known before. And just speaking to 5 people about your existing website, having them go through it, comment on it, it might just destroy all of those preconceptions that you had internally.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you very much for your time, because I think we've just run out of time now.
Yeah.
It's been great talking to you. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
So LinkedIn would be the best. Dawid Zimny, so that's Dawid that you see on the screen at Zimny. And if you can't find me there, you will find me on nerdcow.co.uk. We do have a newsletter called Webabunga, which stems from Kawabunga and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I love it.
You can go for that, and we basically tackle the top problems and give you inspiration for solutions, because that's all web design is. There's never one actual solution. There's inspiration that you can adapt to yourself. And yeah, I think those are the best places.
Love it. Thank you very much. All right. Cheers, David. Thank you. That wraps up this episode of Giraffes Don't Eat Steak. Thanks for joining us. I hope you found value in our discussion and got some new ideas to apply to your own business. Tune in next week for another round of marketing insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you listening. Catch you next time on Giraffes Don't Eat Steak.